My name's George Walters, presently living in Alnwick, and I was in my 30s in the 80s. Quite a busy social life in the 80s. Alnwick was a lovely, thriving town, a market town where people used to come in from all over the place, and very well populated, the pubs. Oscars and the Plough, Fleece, where we used to go everywhere. I wasn't popular in some of the pubs, which were nearer to the top of the hill, but we went anywhere. Being a policeman, they didn't want you in the pub, so that's why we went. We weren't going to let anybody create a no-go area. We went to every pub. I've had numerous friends, most of them are dead now. But I drink now with a lad who used to have a pub in them days. And we do the town now. We go around the town. He's a popular lad, and everybody knows me because of what I used to do. So we get on quite well. It's like a ghost town now compared to what it was socially. Restaurants, charity shops, and the pubs are so dead it's untrue. Oh, I was into everything, any kind of music really. Queen, Phil Collins, all the rock bands, middle of the road stuff, great. Never had time for television. Most of my shifts were late shifts. And if I wasn't at home, I'd try to get out for a drink, you know. It's a culture in the police as well, I think, drinking. And probably the pressure of work. Sport, love football. I used to work every football match I could get with the dog, because I was a police dog handler, so I always worked the football matches with the dog. Oh, we had a good side in them days. Aye. It was enjoyable to watch. It was a sport then. I think there's too much politics in it now, especially with this owner we're about to lose. With the dog, we used to work outside the ground, and then 5 minutes after the kick-off, the dogs were put away to rest. They were watered and put away, and we went into the ground to be on standby. So we just stood by in the ground. 10 minutes before the final whistle, we were deployed outside the ground. So we saw most of the match. Yeah, I do. That's a great miss in the town. But it was the majority of the feelings on that was political correctness and health and safety, and because that's what spoiled the strongest man, wasn't it? Public safety. There was a forklift used to carry the sack up and down the hill, the sack of sand for the strongest man, and they had to stop it because there was kids running about the place. That was a shame, that. But the fair was tremendous. There was live music in every pub. You never see it now. Being a dog handler, my hobby's always been dogs. So I used to go to trials with a dog. He was a very competent dog in them days. We were a firearms team as well, so we used to get called out quite regular to firearms incidents. Most of my time was walking my dogs, and I've still got 5 now, even though I've been retired 15 years. They're trained to police standard, and I have 2 drugs dogs, which are working dogs, and they work for the private sector, because that's what I do now. I train dogs for the private sector. You were close-knit with the other policemen that lived in the street, because there's only police houses in the street at the time. I believe they've all been sold off now, but it was a nice little quiet area right behind the police station. I think it has. The youth in the town are horrendous at the moment. They're out of control, and there's not a policeman to be seen on the streets to sort them out like we used to in the 80s. The people that I used to deal with in the 80s, who are all well grown up now, have nothing but respect for what we used to do. And yet, at the time, they thought we were hard, but we were fair. And I see them in the pubs now, and they buy you a drink, they have a bit chat about the old times. But now, the youth of today is just out of control. I was, early in the 80s, I was working in Felling Police Station, or from Felling Police Station. Joined the dog section and moved up here as a police dog handler. And I covered from Morpeth to the Scottish border, and from the coast across to Otterburn, and that was my area, which was quite a good area. You could disappear, really, and they wouldn't know you were there. It was really good. You never went to the same place twice in a week. But the beauty of it was I had me dog. You know, you were a different soldier with a dog. You got different types of work to do. It wasn't like driving a Panda or anything like that. It was specialist work. And you were called on more and more. You know, the drug side of it, drugs dog I had, and the firearms dog, which I had. And you spent a lot more time doing them jobs than you did mundane patrols. I started off in Scotswood when I joined, and I was foot patrolling in Scotswood. And you lived off your nerve ends there, mind, I tell you that. It was a different world down there compared to what it is up here. But it was enjoyable as well. For all you were in a really deprived area, which Scotswood was at that time, there were some really nice people there. You know, and you didn't have to dig far to find them. They would come out the woodwork whenever there was any bother. They would come out and help you. Now, you can see it here. If a policeman was in bother, people would stand and watch. I mean, I've seen it. Since I retired, I've seen that happen. So it's, it might be a nice place, Annick, and a different story in Scotswood, but I think I would rather work in Scotswood. But you would only attend jobs where the dog was required. Public order, intruders, missing persons, firearms incidents, drug searches. And they was my bread and butter. So most of the public order situations were last resort, really. Men on the ground couldn't cope with it, so they would need a dog to sort it. And unfortunately, the dog was used on many occasions. We had some really good information coming in at that time about organised fights that the football teams used to have dedicated hooligans, and we would find out where they were going to fight, and we would turn up as well. And we used to have some real fun with them, because they were weaponed up, and we used to sort them out. People don't realise that your biggest criminals sometimes are your informants, and that's how they stay where they are. But any bit of information, if it's right, can be used properly. So in the old days, we'd put lines of policemen in between the supporters, but it's all down to stewards now, I think, stewards, marshals, and because everybody's accountable in a stadium now. If you've got a seat, you've got a number, they know who the number is, because the number's got a name. You lose your ticket, so it's not worth being a naughty boy at a match anymore, is it? You can feel, well, you're threatened every time you get out the car or your van at an incident, because there's people threatening you with violence. Scared, I've been to firearms incidents. I've been involved in serious fires. And yeah, you get scared, all right. There's never a day goes by on an evening shift that you don't get scared somewhere. It's a liar or a brave man that says he wasn't. The miners' strike was 1983, was before I moved up to the Annick area. We used to get picked up from your station and transported by vans into Market Street, where we'd all get a full English breakfast, and then piled into vans and deployed, hopefully, because it was so cold. You just wanted something to do. You bear in mind that the vans in them days had bench seats in, with no heating, at all in the backs. Not like these limousines that they get now, with lovely seats and music. We got nothing in them days. And then we'd get deployed, if you were lucky, to one of the active sites where the pickets were. If there was no pickets, you weren't deployed to that colliery. Some of them, some were extremely hostile. Others were just numbers of people standing around fires, keeping warm. But the likes of Monk Wearmouth in Sunderland was a very extremist situation there. The pickets would come from all over the country, especially North Yorkshire. And when the scabs, as they were called, was the ones that wanted to go back to work, were taken in by a coach. The coaches were armoured with mesh across the windows, and we had to form lines between ourselves and the coaches and the pickets who were throwing bricks. And when the coaches came in, the pickets would push, hoping that they could push us under the buses. So that was quite scary, doing that one. The missiles would bounce off the buses and hit us from behind. So there was a few minor injuries that way. But I never seen any serious injuries at all. But it was terrifying, like. And then other places, like Brinkley, an open cast site, you were standing talking to them at some stage, the pickets that is, until the buses turned up with the so-called scabs in. And then they would start spitting and cursing and swearing at you and trying to assault you. And then when the buses got in, it was back to normal. They would start talking to you again, sharing cups of coffee, and because we used to provide all the coffee for them because we got it for nothing. And they had out, poor souls. So we look after them most of the time. I used to have a lot of friends. My father was a miner. Obviously, he died before the miner strike, so I don't know what his opinion would be on me working the picket lines and choosing sides, as they put it. But I had a lot of friends on the side I've just talked about, Brinkley there, and they spat on me and never spoke to me again. So, yeah, you lose friends. There's fathers and sons never spoke since the miner strike. It's a horrendous thing. But we were just pawns in it all. I mean, shortly before the miner strike, Margaret Thatcher had made sure that we all got big pay rises, which we did, and a lot of people said we were bought, but we weren't. You've only got to comply with the rules, the law, the orders that you're given, and there's no way you can turn around and say no, being a police officer. So you had to do it, whether you liked it or not, or which side you wanted to support. I used to have a lot of friends. My father was a miner. Obviously, he died before the miner strike, so I don't know what his opinion would be on me working the picket lines and choosing sides, as they put it. But I had a lot of friends on the side I've just talked about, Brinkley there, and they spat on me and never spoke to me again. So, yeah, you lose friends. There's fathers and sons never spoke since the miner strike. It's a horrendous thing. But we were just pawns in it all. I mean, shortly before the miner strike, Margaret Thatcher had made sure that we all got big pay rises, which we did, and a lot of people said we were bought, but we weren't. You've only got to comply with the rules, the law, the orders that you're given, and there's no way you can turn around and say no, being a police officer. So you had to do it, whether you liked it or not, or which side you wanted to support. I can understand why they wanted more money, because I wouldn't like to work underground, but I don't believe in strikes. No matter who I supported, if they went on strike, I couldn't support that. The police, well, we weren't, you're not allowed to be in a union, the police, you're in a federation. And they'd mouth strike and this, that and the other. I would never have went on strike. You know, I just don't believe in striking. People say it's a last resort, but I think there's got to be something before that. So I could never do it. I think if Margaret Thatcher had been a man, she would have had total respect. And I think it's because she was a woman that she got disrespect. Men didn't like her. And that was the problem. She was the minority. She had no support. I think that's why she was probably a brash woman. Because poor Dennis looked very timid, didn't he? But the rest of them, the politicians, they were terrified of her. If she'd been a man, been another Churchill, and been more successful, it's you're wasting your time getting involved in politics when you're in the police, because you're not allowed to voice your opinions. So, and I tried not to have any, especially when it affected us. But I had a little soft spot for her, really. It affected the North East big style, but if you look at everything, apart from the shipyards, look at the coal mines. They're out of fashion, aren't they? They're not using coal anymore. They're closing coal power stations, you know, for pollution. So they were on a hiding to nothing anyway. And I've said that my father was a miner. Support the miners in that way. Work anybody for a job, you know. But I think it was a dying game anyway. The mines were going to fail. I think they were dictated to by a very strong trade union, personally. And I think Arthur Scargill was the big mouth of it all. And I think he had a lot to answer for. I didn't like the man, as a man. As a trade unionist, he's a typical extremist. At that time, we had a lot of people like that in the trade unions. Most of them were Scotsmen. Very brash people. Very good at talking, very good at arguing. And I think they misled a lot of people in this country, trade unions. You don't hear much about them now, do you? If they just had a little bit more about them, they would realise that we had no option but to be there and do what we were doing. But as I've said to a lot of people, when you're in the police, you find out who your true friends are. Well, the Metropolitan Police is the biggest police force in the country, as you know. And I think they think they're a cut above the rest. Every other police force, because it's called mutual aid when people come from other forces to work. Most of the other forces were very close, worked together, did everything together, but the Met and the City of London stood apart and didn't want to be part of the country bumpkins, shall we say, the rural police. I mean, that's what life's all about, negotiation, information. It's power, isn't it? Information. So if you ask the right questions, you hope for the right answers. If you don't get them, you've got to work at that. Everything's sorted out by negotiation. Wars aren't finished by strikes, are they? You know, if you don't stop bombing my country, I'm going on strike. You've got to negotiate, haven't you? That's the way I see it. It's got to be talked about. Everything has. Even whose turn is it to get the drinks in? You've got to talk about it sometimes, because other people kind of get their hands out of their pockets. I wouldn't have been an unofficial or an illegal picket. I think I would have went back to work with the scabs. In fact, I know I would. I wouldn't have went on strike in the first place. Obviously, there's times you can't go to work because your path's barred by the pickets. But once they start taking them in on the buses, I would have been on the buses. I would have went to work. There wasn't a hope in hell that I was going to go down a pit. as I'm a twin, and myself and my twin sister were taken down the pits. When the pits were closed for the summer holidays, my father was an overman, which was like a supervisor type capacity in the pits. And he worked for safety reasons and keeping the pumps going so that there was pits to come back to really when the holidays were over. We were taken down the pits to have a look, and it wasn't my scene, that's for sure. No way was I going to work down there.